Scientific name: Habitat: koalas live over a range of about open forest and woodland communities, but ultimately their habitat is defined by the presence of a select group of food trees. Koalas are found in higher densities where food trees are growing on more fertile soils and along watercourses. Scientific name: koalas range summer temperatures average around 80 degrees Fahrenheit. They live in a subtropical climate with summer temperatures around 86 degrees Fahrenheit. Abiotic factors and biotic factors. Abiotic factors of a koala are climate change, flooding, and the heating of the eucalyptus leaves. Biotic factors are predators, human deforestation, and hunters. Position in the food chain: koalas are purely herbivores and only eat certain eucalyptus. Koalas are herbivores and cannot produce its own food, so it is a consumer. A consumer is an organism that eats other organic matter. It eats eucalyptus leaves to gain energy to survive. Importance in the food chain: the koala bear is the primary consumer of this food web. A primary consumer is the animal or thing that eats most of the stuff in the food web. They have an instrumental role to play in the animal food chain. They are prey to a vast range of carnivorous species like eagles, large owls, and pythons, which find them to be a perfect delicacy.
Now we're going to talk about the mute swan, or its scientific name, Cygnus olor. So this type of swan lives in Europe between the British Islands and all the way to Asia. They normally go to the south to the coastal base when they need to migrate because they need a better place to live because they can't tolerate winter. Climate. Well, as we know, because of the migration, they can't tolerate wintry seasons, so it's probable that they prefer a more tempered ecosystem like a temperate forest or a prairie because they can have ponds and lakes and they can live in peace and reproduce because they need to reproduce in a warm environment with a lot of water. Now, the abiotic and biotic factors that come into play when this animal is there. The abiotic factor is that the ponds and lakes and the places where they live are now populated with humans and also contaminated by these ones. And the biotic factors are two. First one, the mute swan is an invasive species, which means that when they migrate, they go to other places, and the species living there are threatened by this swan because it's really aggressive. Also, humans also they are allergic to humans, so that's the two biotic factors. As we can see in this image, the position of the mute swan in the trophic chain is as a first consumer because they are herbivores and only eat plants. But it also is the food for another type of swan, the tundra swan, which is a really big swan that normally eats them. Okay, lastly, the importance of the mute swan in the trophic chain is only as a food for predators, but it also, like it's an invasive species, it kind of meddles with another trophic chains. Like when they migrate to the other place, they threaten the other species, so the traffic chain of that place messes up.
Borrowing Burrowing owls. Its scientific name is Athene cunicularia. Burrowing owls live in open habitats with sparse vegetation, such as prairie, pastures, desert, or shrub steppe in airports. In parts of the range, they are closely associated with prairie dogs and ground squirrels, whose burrows they use for nests, and they have a climate desert. Biotic factors. The grassland ecosystem includes the autotrophs and the heterotrophs, that is, the producers, primary consumers, secondary consumers, and tertiary consumers. For the burrowing owl survival, it will live for a sustainable while, for their feeders blend very well with the ecosystem they are located. For the abiotic factors, temperature plays a big role. It frames the ecosystem with that including rainfall, wind flow, and ground moisture. Grasslands have a precipitation of 500 to 900 millimeters per year, whereas the deserts have a rainfall of about 250 millimeters per year. Position in food chain. All owls are predators. They depend on other animals for food. However, very few predators, such as weasels, bats, shrews, and insect-eating birds. Therefore, owls hold a position at the top of the food chain. Like many predators, they feed from more than one link on the chain or web. Important in food chain. Like all predators, owls play an important role in nature by removing from pre-population individuals that can be considered surplus. Most wildlife populations produce more offspring than their habitats can support. These surplus individuals eventually die of starvation, disease, or predation. Although starvation and disease may affect individuals through the population, predators tend to remove the weaker members of a population that are easiest to catch and least able to cope with the rigors of their environment.
Giraffe. The scientific name is Giraffa. The habitat. Giraffes live in non-terrestrial groups up to 20. Home ranges are as small as 85 kilometers squares in wetter areas, but up to 1,500 square kilometers in dry regions. The climate that they live in is the savanna. Biotic and abiotic factors. Biotic factors are predators, and abiotic factors is human hunting. Consumer type. The giraffe is a primary consumer, meaning that they only eat plants and not other animals. Their importance in the food chains is that they serve as food for other animals and they also eat some bugs.
Asian elephant. Scientific name Elephas maximus. Habitat: they live in savannas, grasslands, rainforests, deciduous forests, and more. Their range extends from the sea level all the way to 1,000 feet high elevations. Climate: tropical. Biotic and abiotic factors. The biotic factors that live in the Asian elephant's habitat are tigers, rhinos, and different kinds of plants like bamboo. The abiotic factors in which Asian elephants live are wind, water, sunlight, temperature, and climate. Consumer type. The Asian elephants are primary consumers because they are herbivores. This means that they only eat herbs. Importance in food chain. These elephants are important to the food chain because they spread the seeds of the plants that they feed on. They also have positive influence on the growth of numerous plant and animal species that share its diet.
The panda. Its scientific name is Ailuropoda melanoleuca. Its habitat is that wild pandas live only remote mountainous regions in central China. Giant pandas live in a large bamboo forest on a humid and relatively high mountains, about 1,200 to 3,100 meters, and it's equal to 4,000 to 10,000 feet above sea level. Its climate is temperate without extreme in the winter or summer. Its biotic factors is fertility, human populations, expansion, and food supply. And its abiotic factor is population, natural disaster, and climate changes. Consumer type. Herbivores are primary consumers such as plants and algae. Giant pandas, Ailuropoda melanoleuca, like these cubs at the Wolong Nature Reserve in China. They are herbivores. Its importance in the food chain. The panda role is to distribute seeds through the area to produce its own food in a way both species depend on each other to grow and produce more pandas which become food for other organisms.